what have you done for me lately? Okay, what have you done for me lately? That is a question that I am asked pretty much every day. Now, who asks this question? My wife, my son, my daughter, my boss, the industry I work in. And this question is a question that really has no answer to satisfy the person who's asking the question, because it's never good enough. And all the time as I'm asked this question, I think to myself, you're really asking the wrong question, because it's changed over time. It's evolved. And so now the question from the insurance industry, where I'm from, is, what difference has data made? And I say, that's the wrong question. The question you should be asking yourself is, how do you intend to stay relevant in this insurance marketplace without the use of data? And I turn the question on its head. And I've yet to get an answer from my clients relative to this question. You see, in the States, we're in what I like to call the data wars. All the insurance companies in the States going after one another right now to get tech up, to get tech savvy, to move forward. And it's this infusion of data into a process where 10 years ago there was none. Our industry in the States, the insurance industry, was the last to embrace data. Professional sports overseas, 30 years. Accounting, 20 plus years. Insurance has only seen this data revolution within the last 5 to 7 years. And we're still nowhere where we need to be. So how do we get there? How do we get to where we're supposed to be? What does that look like? And then I tell my clients, that's your answer. Data is what will get you there. Because what every single carrier in the States is looking to do is become automated in their claims process. Claims automation. That is where we are headed. I like to call it the new now, because it's upon us. And a failure to acknowledge this new now is suicide in the state's insurance industry. Everybody is moving towards this new now. We even have a hip phrase for it. We call it no touch, low touch. I don't know where this comes from, but it's something we all say. No touch, low touch. And everybody goes around saying that, yes, we're going to evolve into this no touch, low touch environment without actually understanding what that means. We work in the business of insurance, yet we can't figure out how to evolve into that next gen because it's a risky proposition. And so the reality of it is that this new now consumes us because it's around us and we have to become part of it. And we're left asking, how do you evolve without data? And the reality is this: the race is too fast. It takes time. But the CEO and other departments don't necessarily want to hear that because an ROI feels like it must be immediate. And so in this new now, we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to change certain things, and as an insurance industry, we don't like change very much. But we have to become familiar with this new now to move forward. The problem with it is that claims automation invites fraud. Anyone that tells you that claims automation will reduce fraud is likely wrong. We cannot begin to forecast the fraud in our environment, which hasn't yet to be perfected. But the reality is that claims automation will mean less touch. And so if data is not actively involved in your process, your fraudulent claim environment will increase. I know that much. And so does the industry. But the reality of it is you still have to go from point A to point B. So what has data done for you lately? It's the engine to get you to the new now. The problem with that is that you can't go about it the way you used to. You can't engage in this race. You cannot rush to product. You have to learn to adapt in a slower, more calculated, more strategic environment because the risk is higher with rolling out an integration in your claims environment. That's going to take better communication, better collaboration, and innovation in your part to take the time to do this process right. So what does that look like? The communication aspect has to drastically change, in my opinion. We are so compartmentalized in our insurance companies that when we have conversations, it's I'm speaking with somebody here, I'm speaking with somebody here, and I'm speaking with somebody here. And we don't speak together. The concept of a round table. No beginning, no end. Everybody has an equal say in the process. When we talk about communicating better to advance ourselves to this new now, this is what I'm talking about. Sitting at a table with everybody that has an equal say, getting to your thought leadership earlier to get the buy-in than begging for forgiveness on the back end. Who do you invite? And this is not an inclusive list, but the reality is, first party that should be invited to that roundtable is your IT. And I think a lot of insurance companies miss the mark by not bringing in their IT to this discussion because who's responsible for the daily rollout? Who's responsible for the problem? Who's responsible to take it from process to product? IT. So if they don't have a seat at the table, if they don't have a voice, how could you possibly expect this capital investment to carry you forward? You must invite IT to get to the new now. Secondly, claims. Claims must be a part of the solution for no other reason than money. They hold the purse strings. So how do you think you're going to implement a new process? How do you think you're going to get buy-in? How do you think you're going to get to the next step, which is collaboration, without claims? Claims has a seat at the table, a big seat at the table. So they have to be a willing participant, not somebody who has a gun pointed at their head, but somebody that wants to be there, that wants to be heard and part of the process, to effectuate change, to get to the new now, and to realize the data and allow the data to work for them in this claims automation environment. Finally, SIU. SIU must be at the table. Now, SIU and claims sometimes butt heads. No secret. But at this environment, in this table, there must be cooperation. At the end of the day, that output, that algorithm, that advice that the AI is giving you is going to be investigated by SIU. So how can they not be at the table? Their world will change with claims automation. Referrals will go up, as you'll see. SIU must have a seat at the table. For no other reason than where I come from, it's a lot of ex-law enforcement, and sometimes people are afraid. They're afraid that the AI is going to take away their job. They're afraid that the no-touch world will disintegrate the touch of the investigator being in the field. It's an unfortunate reality. Data doesn't replace the human touch. Data enhances the human touch, and that's what it's here to do. And that's why we invite SIU to the conversation. Now, collaboration. My old friend. General George McClellan, a Civil War general, commander-in-chief of the Union Army. This man was bred for war. Went to High Point, second in his class, was an advisor in the Crimean War. Expert in logistics. His men loved him. His first assignment by President Lincoln was to go down to Virginia and quell the Confederate Army. McClellan, being an excellent logistical general, landed 100,000 troops. Think about that back then, 100,000 troops behind where the Confederate Army had been stationed. He sent advance scouts. His scouts came back. They said, "General, we outnumber them 10-1. So what did the general do? He did nothing. He told his 100,000 men to dig in, make camp, and do nothing. And for the next 3 months, this army did nothing. It sat and it waited until the Confederate general, Robert E. Lee, figured that this man was weak. He was the wrong person for the job. And what did General Lee do? He slaughtered his men. Despite being outnumbered 10-1, the Confederate Army routed General McClellan's men. So what's the point? The second step is collaboration. You must have the right person, the right fit for the right job to get the best result. Understanding what works in your organization, who to do that specific function, is an art form. You're not picking somebody for the sake of picking somebody. It must be the right person. President Lincoln thought this guy could get the job done. He looked great on paper. Epic failure. And so too, when we assign people to tasks in our organization that look great on paper, but can't get it done in process, epic failure. Because as we all know, working in insurance, there's always somebody to answer to. So when you collaborate after you've had your period of communication, make sure that that collaboration involves the right people, to have the right conversation with those right people, and to invite them to the process. Third, innovation. I'm told this picture may look familiar to some of you. Coach Mark Lammers. Yeah, I hear some of it, yes. I too coach. I respect his ingenuity. He knew he was going to Beijing in 2008 for the Olympics. He knew that his ladies team was going to be fighting an uphill battle because the conditions, the temperature in that environment are susceptible to fatigue and to exhaustion quicker, faster. So what did coach do? He wasn't daunted by this. He innovated around it. Devised a system where the girls, the ladies, would be in these buckets filled with ice water to better condition the muscle, so fatigue wouldn't set in as quickly as it should, to have a competitive advantage over his adversaries on a world stage. And you know what? It worked. They were better conditioned, but that's not the point. His adversaries from Argentina saw this and thought this was a great idea. I'm going to do that too. But what they failed to realize is that by just sticking them in buckets of water is not going to do the job. That coach did not understand that the temperature of that water had to be at a certain degree. He didn't understand they had to be there for a certain time. And what did he do? He sabotaged himself. His ladies' teams were injured, hurt, more or less destroyed the team he had built because the conditioning failed. He wasn't using the science behind the process. He was just rolling out the process. Copycatting somebody's idea is not innovation. Innovation takes time. Yes, it takes money. And it takes a willingness and a buy-in to get it right. This coach wanted to win. You don't win by playing in the latter half of the game. You start off before you even play the game. And that's what we need to do before we get into this claims automation environment to better prepare ourselves to be successful. Think like this coach did. Innovate for the sake of innovating because our competitors are already there. And a warning? Yes, in our industry, we like to look around at other carriers, see what they're doing, talk to our friends. We do that well, especially with social media, because it's easy to do. Oh, look what this carrier is doing. It's working for them. Why don't we do the same? And we fail to realize that copycatting makes no sense in this environment. My book of business as carrier A is completely different than the book of business that carrier B runs. So why would I think their process would work for me? It's as different as the day is long, and it makes no sense. You must be personal with your innovation. Look to the four corners of your company. Look to the book, the risk that you write. Grasp that concept and meaningfully innovate. And learn to think outside the box for your own. Now, I'm not telling you to exist in isolation, but the warning is this. Taking something from somebody else and trying to make it your own, at least in my experience, is another epic fail. And when this all comes together, what happens? I was pleased to have worked on a project back home, 174% increase in fraud referrals when they simply took their time to build it out. Not worrying about the CEO screaming, ROI, ROI, I need ROI in 30 days. I wrote a large check. What's my ROI? Doing it the right way and understanding that data takes time led this company to 174%. SIU, that was afraid of the change, now embraces the change because they've never been so busy in their life. And so we have to learn to slow this process down. We must learn to embrace what's to come and think ahead, just like Coach did in the previous example I mentioned. If we fail to do this, if we continue to go down this path, if we continue to rush this process, claims automation will overtake your company. It'll overtake your company, and your severity will rise. Your expenditure will rise, whether that's legal or whether that's third-party expense or vendor expense, but it's going to rise. Because you're going to be, as we used to call it not so long ago, in an era of pay and chase. The claims automation will pay quicker than you can investigate the fraud. And it's almost back to the future from something that we tried to escape 15 years ago, all for the sake of customer satisfaction. Not the best business model if we don't plan ahead. So, realize that in order to get to this new now, data is what takes you there. This is what data has done for you lately. It's brought you into this new era. Without your relationship with data, claims automation is impossible. They live together. Realize that the opportunity is here, and it's now, and it's yours. And that if you forget the past, you're destined to make mistakes in the future. So bring your carriers into that future state. Look me up. I'll be there waiting. Thank you.